This is day 7 of the August 93 7-day retreat at Springwater. Our talk today will be a reading, several authors, most of which by some people have been heard before, including myself. But if the listening is not just from memory, then what is heard is new. First selection is from the Zen teaching of Wang Po, translated by John Blofeld. What is read has been abbreviated. The words, sentences have been left out. This is not in order to make a presentation of Wang Po, but read what seems to be helpful in some way to hear. For a while I did not read Wang Po, but there was lots of requests to hear him again. So we've picked him up again. This is a dialogue between Wang Po and his scholar, governor, disciple Pen Tzu, which took place about 1,000 years ago in China. Questioner: what is the way, and how must it be followed? Wang Po: what sort of thing do you suppose the way to be, that you should wish to follow it? Questioner: what instructions have the masters everywhere given for meditation practice and the study of the truth? Wang Po: words used to attract the dull of wit are not to be relied on. Questioner: if those teachings were meant for the dull-witted, I have yet to hear what truth has been taught to those of really high capacity. Wang Po: if they are really people of high capacity, where would they find people to follow? If they seek from within themselves, they will find nothing tangible. How much less can they find a teaching worthy of their attention elsewhere? Do not look to what is called the true teaching or teaching of the truth by preachers, for what sort of teaching could that be? Questioner: if that is so, should we not seek for anything at all? Wang Po: by conceding this, you would save yourself a lot of mental effort. Questioner: but in this way, everything would be eliminated. There cannot just be nothing. Wang Po: who called it nothing? Who was this fellow? But you wanted to seek for something. Questioner: since there is no need to seek, why do you also say that not everything is eliminated? This is logic operating. Wang Po: not to seek is to rest tranquil. Who told you to eliminate anything? Look at the void in front of your eyes. And the void here does not mean some imagined vacuum, but rather everything without making it into anything. Look at the void in front of your eyes. How can you produce it or eliminate it? Questioner, do you mean that we should not form concepts as human beings normally do? Wangpo, I have not prevented you. But concepts are related to the senses, and when feeling takes place and concepts are formed, wisdom is shut out. Questioner, then should we avoid any feeling in relation to the Dharma or the true teaching? Wangpo, where no feeling arises, who can say that you are right? Questioner, why do you speak as though I was mistaken in all the questions I've asked your reverence? Wangpo, you're a man who does not understand what is said to him. What is all this about being mistaken? Questioner, up to now you have refuted everything which has been said. You have done nothing to point out the truth to us, or the true teaching. Wangpo, in truth there is no confusion, but you produce confusion by your questions. What sort of true teaching can you go seeking for? Questioner, since the confusion arises from my questions, what will your reverence's answer be? Wangpo, observe things as they are and don't pay attention to other people. There are some people just like mad dogs barking at everything that moves, even barking when the wind stirs among the grass and leaves. Later on he says, it has never been taught that men or human beings should seek for learning or form concepts. Yet, of course, that's what the mind is eternally doing. Not eternally, most of the time. Studying the way is just a figure of speech. It is a method of arousing people's interest. In fact, the way is not something which can be studied. Study leads to the retention of concepts or the formation of concepts. And so the way is entirely misunderstood. Moreover, the way is not something especially existing. Truly, it is not located anywhere. The first step is to refrain from knowledge-based concepts. This implies that if you were to follow any method to the utmost limit, on reaching that limit, you would still be unable to locate mind, here spelled with a capital M. The way is spiritual truth and was originally without name or title. It was only because people ignorantly sought for it empirically that Buddhas appeared and taught them to eradicate this method of approach. Fearing that nobody would understand, they selected the name way. You must not allow this name to lead you into forming a mental concept of a road. Once I put this question to the Master: how many of the 400 or 500 people gathered here on this mountain have fully understood your reverence's teaching? The Master answered, their number cannot be known. Why? Because this way is through mind awakening. How can it be conveyed in words? Speech only produces some effect when it falls on the uninstructed ears of children. Though others may talk of the ways, here it says of the Buddhas, you can apply it to any way of this or that, as something to be reached by various pious practices and sutra, scripture studies, you must have nothing to do with such ideas. A perception, sudden as blinking, that subject and object are one, will lead to a deeply mysterious, wordless understanding. And by this understanding, you awake to the truth. Your true nature is something never lost, even in moments of delusion, nor is it gained at the moment of enlightenment. It depends on nothing, and it is attached to nothing. It is all-pervading, spotless beauty. It is the self-existent and uncreated absolute. Absolute, again, meaning not dependent on anything. It is a jewel beyond all price. We're reading from these selections in a chronological order, chronologic as to the age, the time in which these things written. This was written, the author of these poems, Ryokan, a hermit living in Japan, in the mountains, was born in 1758. The book is called One Robe, One Bowl. The night is fresh and cool. Staff in hand, I walk through the gate. Wisteria and ivy grow together along the winding mountain path. Birds sing quietly in their nests, and a monkey howls nearby. As I reach a high peak, a village appears in the distance. The old pines are full of poems. I bend down for a drink of pure spring water. There's a gentle breeze, and the round moon hangs overhead. Standing by a deserted building, I pretend to be a crane softly floating among the clouds. Today's begging is finished. At the crossroads, I wander by the side of Hachiman Shrine, talking with some children. Last year, a foolish monk. This year, no change. Once again, the children and I are fighting a battle using spring grasses. Now advancing, now retreating, each time with more refinement. Twilight, everyone has returned home. The bright round moon helps me endure the loneliness. Listening to the evening rain in my hermitage, the great way, I braid spring flowers into a ball. The future? If a visitor brings these questions, I have only the tranquility of the hermitage to offer. Late at night, the faint sound of someone pounding rice. Dew drips from the bamboo onto the firewood pile, and the plants along the garden are also moist. Frogs croak in the distance, but then seem very close. Fireflies light low then high. Wide awake, sleep is far off. Smoothing out the pillow, I let the thoughts drift. A thief has stolen my zafu and futon, my mat and cushion. Why did he break into my hermitage? The door is never locked. The night is ending and I sit alone by the window. A sparse rain falls gently against the bamboo grove. In the distance, frogs croak in the mountain rice fields, the evening's single song. The rainy season is over. It's now clear. I go out. Green fields and cool breezes everywhere. Unable to sleep, I hear the voice of a young deer rising from a mountain ridge. The branches that will be used for this autumn's firewood are still blooming. Please gather some summer grasses wet with dew and come visit me. So much, no, not much to offer you. Just a lotus flower floating in a small jar of water. I stretch out for a nap in my little hut. In the fields, frogs chant their songs, and the birds in the bamboo grove sing along. In the pond near my hut, the lotus flowers, covered with dew, bloom in a row. Lying on my grass pillow, dreaming about this dream world again, lonely, fitful sleep. As I watch the children happily playing, without realizing it, my eyes fill with tears. Thinking about the people in this floating world far into the night, my sleeve is wet with tears. The thief left it behind, the moon at the window. A very short selection from Letters to a Young Poet by Rainer Maria Rilke, written in 1904. You have had many and great sadnesses which passed. And you say that even this passing was hard for you and put you out of sorts. But please consider whether these great sadnesses have not rather gone right through the center of yourself, whether much in you has not altered, whether you have not somewhere at some point of your being undergone a change while you were sad. Only those sadnesses are dangerous and bad which one carries about among people in order to drown them out. Like sicknesses that are superficially and foolishly treated, they simply withdraw and after a little pause, break out again the more dreadfully, and accumulate within one and our life, our unlived, spurned, lost life, of which one may die. Were it possible for us to see further than our knowledge reaches, and yet a little way beyond the outworks of our divining, perhaps we would endure our sadnesses with greater confidence than our joys. For they are the moments when something new enters into us, something unknown. Our feelings grow mute in shy perplexity. Everything in us withdraws, a stillness comes, and the new, which no one knows, stands in the midst of it and is silent. A selection from a book, or a brochure, whatever you call it, combined for distribution at the annual gathering 1990 of the Krishnamurti Foundation in India. A questioner says, "What is this self-knowledge of which you speak? And how can I acquire it?" Krishnamurti, you have extraordinary ideas about self-knowledge. That to have self-knowledge you must practice, you must meditate, you must do all kinds of things. It is very simple. The first step is the last step in self-knowledge. The beginning is the end. The first step is what matters, because self-knowledge is not something you can learn from another. No one can teach you self-knowledge. You have to find out for yourself. It must be your own discovery, and that discovery is not something tremendous, fantastic. It is very simple. After all, to know yourself is to watch your behavior, your words, what you do in your everyday relationship. That is all. Begin with that and you will see how extraordinarily difficult it is to be aware, to just watch the manner of your behavior, the words you use to your servant, to your boss, the attitude you have with regard to people, to ideas, and to things. Just watch your thoughts, your motives in the mirror of relationship, and you will see that the moment you watch, you want to correct. You say, that is good and that is bad. I must do this and not that. When you see yourself in the mirror of relationship, your approach is one of condemnation or justification. Therefore, you distort what you see. Whereas, if you simply observe in that mirror your attitude with regard to people, to ideas, to things, if you just see the fact without judgment, without condemnation or acceptance, then you will find that that very perception has its own action. That is the beginning of self-knowledge. To watch yourself, to observe what you do, what you think, what your motives and your incentives are, and yet not to condemn or to justify, is an extraordinarily difficult thing to do, because your whole culture is based on condemnation, judgment, and evaluation. You have been brought up to do this and not that. But if you can look in the mirror of relationship without creating the opposite, then you will find that there is no end to self-knowledge. You see, the inquiry into self-knowledge is an outward movement which later turns inward. First we look at the stars, and then we look within ourselves. In the same way, we look for reality, for God, for security, happiness in the objective world. And when it is not found there, we turn inward. This search for the inner God, the higher self, or what you will, completely ceases through self-knowledge. And then the mind becomes very quiet, not through discipline, but through just understanding, through watching, through being aware of itself every minute without choice. But don't say, I must be aware every minute, just because that is another manifestation of our foolishness when we want to get somewhere, when we want to arrive at a particular state. What matters is to be aware of yourself and to keep on being aware without accumulating. Because the moment you accumulate, from that center you judge. Self-knowledge is not a process of accumulation. It is a process of discovery from moment to moment in relationship. A selection from Being and Becoming by Vimala Thakur, an Indian woman. It says here on the editor's note, the book gives some of the dialogues which took place at Dalhousie, India during the summer of 1989. We are talking about an alternative way of living, which is a meditative way of living. Acquire knowledge, let it flow through you, let it be utilized in its relevant field without creating a knower. If we look at the roots of all human misery, we will find that that misery is built upon our stupidity. We do not know how to relate to the structures and use them without identification, without creating a sense of authority out of them. Structures are not sacred. It is only life that is sacred. Patterns have no sacredness, whether you create them in the name of religion, spirituality, or politics. It is the pattern-free, structure-free, virgin dynamism of life that is sacred, that is divine. Wherever you have touched it with thought, you have manipulated it, you have structured it. It has a utility, but not sanctity. It has a utility, but no authority. An alternative way of living is feeding the brain and the system with all the knowledge, the techniques, without getting identified with it. It is only identification with the knowledge that creates an illusion of the knower. It is the creation of a knower that builds up your bondage. Knowledge itself has no power to bind you. It is the creation of the knower that is the obstacle. You have a beautiful, sensitive body, and the sensitivity gets into touch with its respective objects outside, and they bring sensations. Sensations are converted back to electric impulses, and the brain interprets them. It is a marvelous process of what you call experiencing. Contact with the outside world through the senses, which are very delicate, very tender. It is quite hard and arduous work to keep your sensual system pure, healthy, supple and elastic. Let the experiences flow through the sensual system. Nothing wrong in a sensual, sexual experience, but you create an experiencer and you get stuck in the experiencer and its likes and dislikes, its value structures, its preferences, its prejudices, its theories. If the sensual contact with objects is allowed to flow through you without creating the experiencer, then the limited human-made world cannot corrupt you. As the oneness of life manifesting itself into manyness does not get corrupted, does not lose its vitality, does not get mutilated, the oneness of life manifesting into manyness. In the same way, you acquire knowledge and you appear as an individual playing the role of a father, a mother, a sister, a brother. You are one appearing as many. There's no identification with a fatherness, sonness, daughterness, sisterness, and you don't tie so many knots inside, but play the roles sanely, completely with the magnificence of an inner equipoise. Then you're appearing as many, functioning as many. You're acquiring the knowledge of structures, and handling of structures shall not corrupt you. In the human-made world, one has to learn to let the knowledge flow without creating a knower, and let the experiences take place without creating an experiencer. That is the way of meditative living. Later on she says, silence is inner, unconditional freedom from the authority of the past. Silence is unconditional freedom from effort, and therefore the alternative way of living. Meditation has no repetition at all. It is moment to moment. In the moment of relating, you are living. In the moment of aloneness, you are dying. Meaning dying to all the imagery, ideas, beings. It is living and dying like inhaling and exhaling. To be alone is to die to the sense of being somebody or being something. Is not that the content of death and dying? To be alone is to die to the sense of being somebody. Sinner, saint, holy, knowledgeable, respected, rich, poor. To be alone is to die to being something according to the definition of society, according to the value structure of religions. Physically isolating yourself may not lead you to the aloneness. It may, and it may not. That is what we are afraid of, dying to the sense of being somebody, dying to all the images you have built up about yourself is being alone. The way we're tackling the theme may be unusual, unheard of to many. It is a non-conventional way, a non-traditional approach. But I am really grateful that life brings you and me together. In the remaining time, we will read some poems from the new and selected poems by Mary Oliver, a contemporary poetess. The very first one, I received a note requesting that this one be read, so here it is. It's part of a long poem. It's the last part and it's called The Forest. At night, under the trees, the black snakes jellies forward, rubbing roughly the stems of the bloodroot, the yellow leaves, little boulders of bark, to take off the old life. I don't know if he knows what is happening. I don't know if he knows it will work. In the distance, the moon and the stars give a little light. In the distance, the owl cries out. In the distance, the owl cries out. The snake knows these are the owl's woods. These are the woods of death. These are the woods of hardship, where you crawl and crawl, where you live in the husks of trees, where you lie on the wild twigs and they cannot bear your weight, where life has no purpose and is neither civil nor intelligent. Where life has no purpose and is neither civil nor intelligent. It begins to rain. It begins to smell like the bodies of flowers. At the back of the neck, the old skin splits. The snake shivers, but does not hesitate. He inches forward. He begins to bleed through like satin. When death comes. When death comes like the hungry bear in autumn, when death comes and takes all the bright coins from his purse to buy me, and snaps the purse shut, when death comes like the measles pox, when death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades, I want to step through the door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And therefore, I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I look upon time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life as a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name a comfortable music in the mouth, tending as all music does toward silence. And each body a lion of courage, and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to find myself sighing and frightened or full of argument. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. Alligator poem. I knelt down at the edge of the water, and if the white birds standing in the tops of the trees whistled any warning I didn't understand, I drank up to the very moment it came crashing toward me, its tail flailing like a bundle of swords, slashing the grass and the inside of its cradle-shaped mouth gaping and rimmed with teeth. And that's how I almost died of foolishness in beautiful Florida. But I didn't. I leaped aside and fell, and it streamed past me, crushing everything in its path as it swept down to the water and threw itself in, and in the end, this isn't a poem about foolishness, but about how I rose from the ground and saw the world as if for the second time, the way it really is. The water, that circle of shattered glass, healed itself with a slow whisper and lay back with a backlit light of polished steel. And the birds in the endless waterfalls of the trees shook open the snowy pleats of their wings and drifted away, while for a keepsake and to steady myself, I reached out. I picked the wild flowers from the grass around me, blue stars and blood-red trumpets and long green stems. For hours in my trembling hands, they glittered like fire. Singapore. In Singapore, in the airport, a darkness was ripped from my eyes. In the women's restroom, one compartment stood open. A woman knelt there washing something in the white bowl. Disgust argued in my stomach, and I felt in my pocket for my ticket. A poem should always have birds in it. Kingfishers say with their bold eyes and gaudy wings. Rivers are pleasant, and of course, trees. A waterfall, or if that's not possible, a fountain rising and falling. A person wants to stand in a happy place in a poem. When the woman turned, I could not answer her face. Her beauty and her embarrassment struggled together, and neither could win. She smiled, and I smiled. What kind of nonsense is this? Everybody needs a job. Yes, a person wants to stand in a happy place in a poem. But first we must watch her as she stares down at her labor, which is dull enough. She is washing the tops of the airport ashtrays, as big as hubcaps, with a blue rag. Her small hands turn the metal, scrubbing and rinsing. She does not work slowly nor quickly, but like a river. And her dark hair is like the wing of a bird. I don't doubt for a moment that she loves her life. And I want her to rise up from the crust and the slop and fly down to the river. This probably won't happen, but maybe it will. If the world were only pain and logic, who would want it? Of course it isn't. Neither do I mean anything miraculous, but only the light that can shine out of a life. I mean the way she unfolded and refolded the blue cloth, the way her smile was only for my sake. I mean the way this poem is filled with trees and birds. University Hospital, Boston. The trees on the hospital lawn are lush and thriving. They too are getting the best of care, like you and the anonymous many in the clean rooms high above the city, where day and night the doctors keep arriving, where intricate machines chart with cool devotion the murmur of the blood, the slow patching up of bone, the despair of the mind. When I come to visit and we walk out into the light of a summer day, we sit under the trees, buck eyes a sycamore, and one black walnut brooding high over a ledge of lilacs, as old as the red brick building behind them, the original hospital built before the Civil War. We sit on the lawn together, holding hands, while you tell me you're better. How many young men, I wonder, came here, wheeled on carts off the slow trains from the red and hideous battlefields, to lie all summer in the small and stuffy chambers, while doctors did what they could, longing for tools still unimagined, medicines still unfound, wisdoms still unguessed at. How many died staring at the leaves of trees, blind to the terrible effort around them to keep them alive? I look into your eyes, which are sometimes green and sometimes gray, and sometimes full of humor, but often not, and tell myself you are better, because my life without you would be a place of parched and broken trees. Later, walking the corridors down to the street, I turn and step inside an empty room. Yesterday, someone was here with a gasping face. Now the bed is made all new. The machines have been rolled away. The silence continues, deep and neutral, as I stand there loving you. the summer day. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one who has flung herself out of the grass. The one who is eating sugar out of my hand. Who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down. Who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? We will end here for today.